Okay, cool. So what I was going to do yesterday on last night's call was to really go over the hatchery because I know a lot of people have had some questions and not really understanding how it works and which tier to go in. So I figure, okay, you guys can ask questions and I'll go over some things. So I think the basic, and I'm going to try to make this, I put it together on my whole rack of spreadsheets just on one file. So I need to create this on its own file so people will have it. And I'm not sure if this is something Wally can put on site or not because it starts to get a little bit. I go from one anyway. It's kind of complex on the spreadsheet, but we'll see. But at least you guys are able to kind of get an idea um, of what you can expect in the hatchery and what the differences are between the two. All right, so the screen share is up. So we'll get right into it so that people will see what I did. Can everybody see my spreadsheet okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what I've done on this spreadsheet, I've used multiple, these five here are all interacting together to come up with this one. So I started it out with 500 MoveQuest. And what I did was I give a comparison of tier one, tier two, three, four, and five. Now, the one thing to understand about staking in one of the hatcheries is how the farming rewards work. All right. So what I've done is I've started out with the 500 move quest, and you have to submit proof of physical activity for the farming rewards on a day-to-day basis. So if you miss a day of submission, you don't get the farming rewards for that day. Okay, but it's not like every day. It's just the day that you miss, you won't get the farming rewards. Now, with the golden hatchery and the distribution, okay, so there is a distribution pool. Everybody knows that on a day to day basis, let me come over here to MoveQuest. There's a 4-year halving. Okay, this is Bitcoin's cycle. This is MoveQuest's cycle. It started in 2024. So max amount of MoveQuest that can go out per day through the mining is 7,200 for the first 4 years. Now we're already in year two. Okay. So 7,200, we never reached the ability to mine 7,200 MoveQuest because it's based on many things within the algorithm. The size of the community, supply and demand. That's where the or the mining difficulty plays a role. So, like when Bitcoin was mining in the very beginning days, there was like 50 Bitcoin per hour that was able to be mined. Okay, but that's because in year one for Bitcoin, 2,628,000 went out in each for the first 4 years each year. So 7,200 per day literally were mined every single day. It did not matter how many people were involved in Bitcoin. It didn't matter how many wallets or how many miners there actually were. And it was so easy to mine Bitcoin back then. You could mine it off your machine, just your regular computer. It wasn't until the like fourth year where you really couldn't mine for Bitcoin on just a regular computer, and you had to start having um, adding hardware to your computers. And then it got to where you really needed a warehouse and massive computer power if you wanted to mine Bitcoin. But that's because the mining difficulty was becoming more and more difficult. Because once that halving began, then it was 1,300,000 that went out for 4 years. And then there was another halving, 657,000 for that year would go out. So the mining difficulty became even more difficult. That means less was going out per day. But one of the reasons that Bitcoin had such a difficult time with getting the market value of that token to increase, first you just even get past the dollar mark. I think it took 3 years for it to even, stay above a dollar. And then it was, a couple of years after that, where it started to get in that $10, $20, $30 range into the $100 range. And then it took, you guys, for those of you that weren't around back then, Bitcoin was kind of an enigma. Nobody really knew what it was. How is this going to work? Where's it going to go? Is it really legitimate? Is it something that people are going to gravitate to? And it did. Okay, it took off, and as you guys know, it's now, traded in futures and, of course, in the crypto side of things. And now you've got mainstream, your banking institutions and, everybody's jumping on deck. I used to laugh so much, especially Jamie Dimon, the CEO of Chase Bank. Um, he hated crypto, and he just always said what a scam it was until his daughter made her first million in crypto. And then all of a sudden it was just the next best thing, and now he's buying it and investing in it and holding it. Now you got all your banking, and it's kind of amazing how that shift really took place. In fact, with Jamie Dimon, it was so bad. My bank account at Chase Bank, the tellers would tell me, whatever you do, you know, don't make it known that you're dealing in crypto and that's what's coming into your bank account, because Chase will shut your bank account down. And I'm like, well, but I do everything crypto. And we're talking, this is back in 2000 and, 12, 13, 14. And they did shut my bank account down for that exact reason, because of crypto. So crypto has come a really long way. Now, if you look at the MoveQuest token, the 7,200 that could go out per day, if we did that, followed the same suit, as Bitcoin, and regardless of, the demand for the token, which would work with us, depends on, the demand is, has to match basically supply and demand. If the demand isn't there, you're not going to mine 7,200. But where the hatchery comes in is it makes up the difference based on an algorithm that says, okay, currently, it can support, let me come over to the actual hatchery. It's about five. Well, let me see if I come down here. I got to bring the spreadsheet up because I'm getting my old lady eyes. I was just telling Wally today, I'm like, God, I can't even read our website. It drives me nuts. All right, this is the hatchery. I think I have to come over to the fluid calculator. Hold on here just a second. Okay. So based on the size of the community, I haven't updated this spreadsheet since January 30th. So we'll just go based on January 30th, 2,258 submissions, okay, for that day. So the ecosystem, based on the demand, can handle 564 MoveQuest tokens. That's what can be sustainable, okay, through the actual ecosystem itself. It can sustain that market or that amount of MoveQuest going into circulation. Anything over that would be oversaturation. Okay, and that's where you start to see, those really low token market values, because there's too many tokens in supply. When there's too many tokens in supply, you have more being sold than there is a demand to be bought. Okay, so with MoveQuest, the hatchery plays a big role in that supply and demand. So realistically, okay, we can handle the 3,100 and around the 3,000 to 3,500 mark, okay, being through the hatchery and what's being mined on a day-to-day basis based on when those hatcheries are completed. Okay, so what the ecosystem does and the algorithm that I created is it looks at what is sold on an average basis, what size is the community, at what rate is the community growing, then at what rate is that community retention. Then it goes on to figure up, okay, in 30 days, what could the ecosystem handle when the hatchery releases? And that's how it comes up with the amount that can be farmed in a 30-day period. And then it figures it up at the 75-day period. And then 75 days, 135 days, and then the 210. And now the 323 days for tier 5. And so what it does is it calculates what can be supported through the ecosystem, where the growth would be based on what is currently the rate of growth. Okay. So if this was to take off overnight and, let's say go viral, which many projects do, you never know when it's going to happen. It just happens. The algorithm will adjust itself and it would allow for higher daily mining through the distribution, which is the daily mining when you submit that proof of physical activity. And those are the rewards that you claim that are not in the hatchery. Then it can adjust what the max amount in the each one of those tiers could be increased to based on the growth. So as the growth is happening, that means that there's a higher demand, there's more engagement, which means there is deep, better liquidity that is being injected through the ecosystem. So it can allow for those higher farming, the farmed MoveQuest as well as the mined MoveQuest. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So through all of that, it determines what can go into circulation that it can support as those hatchery cards are completing, right? Where you can claim them or you can renew them. So then what I did was I wanted to do up the hatchery so you guys could see I only did 3 cycles of the hatchery. So I wanted to give you a comparison. So if somebody started out with 500 MoveQuest that they wanted to stake inside the hatchery and farm. Now, tier 1, that's at 30, that's the 30-day hatchery. At the end of 30 days, cycle 1, you've got roughly about 508 MoveQuest. Cycle 2, 515, cycle 3, 523. Okay, that's a total of 90 days. So you would have farmed an additional 23 MoveQuest. Now, I think it's really important for people to understand too, if you are in the hatcheries, is to take that 23 MoveQuest and divide that by those 90 days, and that's an average of 0.255 MoveQuest. Now, if you're mining with 18 trailblazers, you're mining and you're maxing out, okay, you're getting in the 10,000 steps a day. You're mining approximately zero point 0.4 MoveQuest per day. So if you take that 0.4 MoveQuest plus the 0.26 MoveQuest, it's about, did I do that right? Hold on here a second. 0.4, okay, so that'd be about 0.6. So you're mining about 0.6 MoveQuest per day, times that by 90 days, that's about 54 MoveQuest. And I think a lot of people, when they do their submissions, they don't take into account what they're farming as well. So I think that's also key. I didn't add any of that in here, but that does play a big role in the amount of MoveQuest on a daily basis. And I don't know what the averages are for the other miners, only because I really focus on the trailblazers, lately because of the phantom miners. Because anybody can get started with mining and MoveQuest using those phantom miners for 135 days. But I think what's significant when you're looking at just the 3 cycles, a 90-day time frame, you're going to farm about 21 MoveQuest. So the difference from, and I use tier 5 as an example, maybe I should have used tier 4, but for tonight we'll use tier 5. That's 323 days. You would have to renew 11 times to reach that 323 days. And if you did, you would only mine 86 MoveQuest tokens by doing 11 cycles in tier 1. And over here for tier 2, you would have to do 4 cycles of tier 2 to reach what tier 5 is, that 323 days. And you would mine 172 MoveQuest tokens. Okay, this is in tier 2. So if you went tier 2 and that and your hatchery completed and you wanted to renew it, your first cycle, okay, you're gaining 35 MoveQuest tokens. So you can claim those or you could renew, and now you've got 572, cycle 3, 612. That's 225 days total. You farmed 112 MoveQuest tokens. 4 cycles to match tier 5, you would only mine 172 MoveQuest tokens. Tier 3, you'd have to run 2 cycles to reach the 323 days. and you would mine approximately 328 MoveQuest tokens. Tier 4, it's not even really quite 2, it's like 1 1/4, but I don't have my decimals set up over here. If I set up the decimals to 2, you'll see it would be, oh, whoops, that's the wrong one. I'm in the wrong, we want this one. It'd be like 1 1/2, okay, cycles, but you wouldn't be able to, you would lose your MoveQuest if you were to cancel at the 323 days. So, basically it's 2 cycles because you would have to leave it in there. Oh, what am I doing? To finish that out. And you would have mined 451. Now, those of you who got into tier 5, 1 cycle, okay, the 323 days, you're going to mine on 500 MoveQuest, or not mine, but farm on 500 MoveQuest, 10,553 MoveQuest tokens. Okay, that's huge. So all of you who got into tier 5, you guys should be really happy about making that move because that's a really big deal um, on those MoveQuest tokens. You didn't have to put in, a whole lot of MoveQuest. Now, what I did then was I said, okay, if MoveQuest is still at the $7.50 range, because right now, it's stable between the 6 and the 7.50. That's what the ecosystem is currently happy to stabilize it at. You guys kind of seen it'll test the market when it buys MoveQuest to see if it can push past that price, that market value, because the ecosystem does buy MoveQuest. It doesn't sell it, but it does buy it. It has to have MoveQuest pair. And like everybody else, it likes to get MoveQuest at the lowest price possible. And so the best time for the ecosystem to acquire MoveQuest is when there's not a high demand. So later down the road, when the demand is there, you won't see the ecosystem buying MoveQuest because it wouldn't need to. And it's stocking up on what it gets now. And currently it's got over, 2 million MoveQuest tokens that it's bought, or sometimes with testing the market, it'll absorb, 300 or 400 MoveQuest because it'll do a small removal, usually between 3 and 5%. Sometimes it's a little higher. It just depends. And it'll buy MoveQuest and then it'll add back the liquidity. And then by testing that market value to see, okay, is it going to push up? Is there enough demand that, it'll stabilize at that market value and go a little higher? Or does it create kind of some selling pressure? Right now, 9 times out of 10, it creates selling pressure, which you got to think about it. That's not a bad thing because you want people to, you really want, you don't, the more that's sold at the lower market value, the better. It's less that's sold at the higher market value. Okay, so maybe it makes sense what I'm saying, maybe it doesn't. But like I was telling you guys in that one WhatsApp chat that I was in the other day, today, if you sell MoveQuest, 50 MoveQuest, right, you're going to get about $350 when you sell it. I mean, that's going to a crab shack and buying, a lobster crab meal for two, really, because you're going to spend about $275 to do that. And then after you pay your tip and you have a couple cocktails, you're probably gone over what you would have sold that 50 MoveQuest for. Now, when we have grown to where we've got a community of, 10,000 people who are submitting their proof of physical activity, community size has grown, you're looking at a market value that's, in the $1,300-$1,400 range, just based on the amount of MoveQuest that's mined, the amount of MoveQuest that's farmed, the demand for the token, the proof of physical activity submissions, and it doesn't even include, if people level up or if people are doing Q-chips. The only thing that's based on are the submissions, the daily submissions, and unlocking those dock slots and starting with the 18 trailblazer miners. That's what that market value brings in. Nothing else within the ecosystem. So when you're looking at that market value, you'd be able to sell 50 MoveQuest and you would be selling it for about $70,000. So instead of, going out for a shellfish dinner, you could have that, charter boat, $70,000, pontoon fishing type, charter boat. Wouldn't be one of those big fancy charter boats, but enough that you can go out and catch your own lobster and crab for the same 50 MoveQuest that you had, sold today for the shellfish dinner. So that's the difference of, a growing community. Now, when you're looking at your hatcheries, which tier do you want to go into? These are completely safe. Your tokens are in a smart contract. You've always got access to them. So if you have MoveQuest that you plan on holding on to, it doesn't cost anything to go into the hatcheries. There's no expense on your end. It's a smart contract that is securing your MoveQuest for you, but it's removing them from circulation. So when your DEXs and whatnot, when they're looking at the market cap and FDV, they're looking at what is in wallets circulating being sold. That's what they're looking at. And that's how they come up with that FDV or that market cap. So in reality, our market cap is literally only about $1.3 million. So if I was to come over here to the fluid calculator, where's that at? Here we go. Our FDV really is about 1.2 million. Now, if you were to go and look on the DEX right here where it shows where are we at? 140 million. Okay. And the market cap, 140 million. Okay. That's based on 21 million MoveQuest tokens. So if our max supply was literally in circulation today, the liquidity pool would need $140 million. But that's not what is in circulation today. Today, there's 191,271 MoveQuest tokens that are in circulation. And so our FDV is really $1,280,000. Now, as the MoveQuest is coming out of the hatcheries, okay, our FDV or our market cap is 6.9 million, a far cry from 140 million. So once our blockchain goes live and everything is calculated on like CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, you will see that market cap and that FDV drop significantly. Okay, that paints a whole different picture to the public. So when you're looking at this, and if, just so you guys understand, this is based on 21 million MoveQuest tokens. And you can do the math. You can times 21 million MoveQuest tokens times $6.69. And that's what you come up with for that market cap. And that's not what the situation is here with MoveQuest. So once that changes, and this reads 1.2 million, and you're sitting there with $732,000 in your liquidity pool, that spells strong to the public for what is the circulating supply. We have a very low circulating supply on purpose, right? Because after 16 years of crypto, we can look back and say, okay, let's look at Bitcoin. Let's look at Ethereum. Let's look at Dash. Let's look at Litecoin. Let's look at Ripple. Let's look at, the silly token like Doge. And then some of the other projects that built on those different chains and how and what went wrong. What is it that these creators of these projects that are building on these different chains are doing wrong? And so a lot of it is that supply and demand. A lot of people don't look at the math, the science behind crypto. They look at what makes people get excited, right? And so you started to see this shift in crypto where when people were creating projects and they were having their private sales and whatnot, they they started playing with people's emotions. Okay, it's not fun to spend, $100 and only get 100 tokens. It's a whole lot more fun to spend $100 and get 5 million tokens, right? Because you only need that token to go to 0.001 to make a lot of money. Problem is, that token's never going to get to 0.001. It'll be lucky if it gets to 0.00001. And so people end up spending a lot of money on worthless tokens that didn't look at tokenomics. What they wanted to do was make people feel like, wow, I've got a lot. It doesn't have to have a high market value. It's only got to reach almost a penny and I'm going to be a millionaire. Okay, and that was one spot where crypto was, that was one trend at one point in time. Then it went off into these, images for um, NFTs. Then it went into these meme tokens. There's always, people are always trying to create something different based on hype and really a lot of bullshit instead of looking at the math and the science behind what crypto is. And so with MoveQuest, that's exactly what I did. After studying all these projects, studying these chains, seeing, what is it that really is wrong? You have to build your project like a blockchain. You have to look at tokenomics. You have to look at demand, supply. You have to look at the ecosystem and the utility, the use of that token. Is there a use? You have to build it like a city, for there to even be any value in that project. Because otherwise, all it becomes is a security that people are holding to sell for profit. It doesn't have any use, and those are always going to fail. Because they don't have enough traction. They're not guarded with safety rails, right? You've got too many whales. You've got and I can understand why the SEC would say, okay, those need to be securities and registered. Because think about it, if you've got the creators of these projects who are running control over, the who's going to get all these tokens at that low market value, give our deep pocket and friends and our developers and, family and people that are going to throw, $1 million our way, give them boatloads of tokens. Then we're going to have a tier two sale. We're going to raise the price and give you less. And we're going to have a tier three sale, raise the price and give you even less, and raise the price and give you even less. Now you're starting to get into people that have smaller amounts of money, but will spend a lot of it, right? To get a lot less token. Now you've got your whales who didn't spend as much per the person who spent less to get less, but that's the money that's really pumping up what is available on the sale side. And that's when the market value starts to really pump up there. It's not the people that are spending, 0.0001 per token to get millions. It's the people who are spending, you know, 50 cents to get 100 of those tokens. And they are the ones who can't really hurt the liquidity of those projects. It's your whales that are going to cash out once the price is pumped high enough. It's your creators of those projects that have allocated tokens to themselves, their friends, their family, and all these other little things they put on what do they call it, a little pie wheel that says 20% to marketing, 10% to this, 10% to that, 5% to this, and then the community gets the other 80%, right? And at that point, probably 30 or 40% have already gone out to the whales. And it's just a matter of time before it crashes. So when you're looking at MoveQuest and we're looking at the hatcheries and what can go out on a day to day basis, those values are based on growth, the supply, the demand, submissions, so many things that play into it. So when you're looking at the tiers, I know a lot of people think, well, I don't want to lock my tokens up for 323 days. Okay. So yeah, I get that. Don't, because here's the thing. If you cancel a hatchery, you don't get the farmed MoveQuest, but you get all your MoveQuest back. So let's say you were in tier 5 and you mined for 200 days and you want to get your MoveQuest out. 200 days, you would have mined, I don't know, if your first 300 days, cycle one. Oh, this is 3 years, you guys, at 10,000. You're only going to get 1403 cycle one. So I was wrong in the very beginning of this when I said 10,000. This is actually 3 cycles to get that 10,000, which is what all these were based on. But let me go back to up here. So let's say you almost got to your 323 days and you cancel your tier 5 hatchery. You're going to get 500 MoveQuest because here's why. Let's say tier 5 you actually mined for 210 days. Okay, that's tier 4, 210 days. 210 days, and let's come over here to this hatchery. Um, 210 days on 500 would give you 978 MoveQuest tokens. Okay, but if you come over here and you look at tier 4, you're only getting 293. There's a big difference. And you only did the 210 days that tier 4 did. So if you cancel, you lose all of the farmed MoveQuest. Doesn't matter what tier you're in, but that is why. Because somebody could do that. They could say, okay, I'm gonna go into tier 5, but I am going to cancel at 210 days. And if you were able to get all of that farmed MoveQuest, it would be completely unfair to those who are in tier 4 who get less. So just to explain that, that's why. So the golden hatchery, if you are holding MoveQuest, it's a great way for you to get the extra MoveQuest that is not distributed on the day-to-day mining. It's not for people that are selling, their MoveQuest on a daily basis after they mine it, or who are relying on it more, like to supplement their income or whatnot. But it is perfect for those of you who see the long-term vision because if you look at, and I'm going to make this here the 1403 because that would just be one cycle to make it so it is actually realistic. So you'd have to do 11 times, 11 cycles to match the same days in tier 5. 86 MoveQuest token is what you would mine over here. Let me minus that 500 from here. That equals this minus the 500. Oops, I did something wrong there. Hold on. That equals this minus 500. Okay, 903 MoveQuest tokens is what you're going to farm one cycle tier 5 versus it would take 11 cycles tier 1 and you would only get 86 MoveQuest after 11 cycles. So you'd be doing the same amount of days in tier 1 as tier 5, but tier 1 for the same amount of days is 86 MoveQuest tokens, where tier 5 is 903. So that's what this is. 172, you'd have to do 4 cycles to match tier 5, but you're only going to farm the 172 MoveQuest versus the 100 or 903. So you can see the difference here. So tier 4 of the first 4 is the best. Tier 3, that's still not bad, right? For 135 days of farming. But here, 323 days, to reach that, if you were to take 451 times that by 2, that would give you 900 and almost 3 MoveQuest tokens. You would have to run 420 days tier 4 to be able to farm in 323 days tier 5. So I wanted to give you guys all the differences here. Also, the hatcheries, whether it be the nest or any of the tier 1 through 5s, if you are holding MoveQuest in your wallet, you do run the risk of a compromised wallet. If a hacker gets a hold of your phone and you've got your wallet on your phone, if you connect to an unsecure Wi-Fi, there's so many things that can go wrong with your wallet on a device. Okay, unless you're using like a cold storage or like a Tangent wallet system, your tokens are not secure. It's no different than your bank account, right? If you log into an unsecure, you're on an unsecure Wi-Fi and you log into your bank, And, people sit out in parking lots and hotels with special equipment just to hack into people using unsecure Wi-Fi in hotels, at coffee shops. It just happens it happens all the time. So by being in one of the hatcheries, which costs you nothing, you are farming additional MoveQuest tokens. So you're making your crypto work for you. That's for those of you who aren't selling that MoveQuest token. Now, let's look at the market value increasing. Okay, to I'm going to say you're farming and you are going to continue to farm until there's 10,000 people who are engaged with MoveQuest and the proof of physical activity that's being recorded to the blockchain, right? 10,000 people are getting healthy using the MoveQuest app, and it gets to that $1,400 market value. Do you see what the golden hatcheries are doing for you? You're farming more MoveQuest on MoveQuest that you weren't planning to sell. It does secure um, the the market value, or not the market value, but the liquidity algorithms, because it also looks at what's in the circulating supply. It does look, when they're in the smart contracts, MoveQuest that's not being held to sell, but it's being held for the, obviously growth and the long term value of what MoveQuest could become. This is the best place to put it. It's making that FDV, the market cap, it's making that more realistic. There are wallets, they have not touched their MoveQuest tokens in over a year, but they're not in the hatchery. They should be, because 1 year of sitting in tier 5 or tier 4, you see the extra rewards you're going to get. So the reason I'm showing you this is so that you guys are able to say, okay, why are you in the hatcheries? What are your long-term goals? What is it you're trying to achieve? And what would it take? So let's just I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to say, whoops, I don't want that. I'm going to do $100 of MoveQuest, or 100 MoveQuest, not dollars, just 100 MoveQuest. So what I'm going to do is say it's equals that. That way it'll just, oh, I did it. I don't want a plus 500. I just want that one. Just so you guys can see if it's less, with less amounts, because I think this is good too, because not everybody had the 500 MoveQuest to put in one of the tiers. This way I only have to fill this in once. There we go. Okay. And let's just put it down to $7.50. Let's just say MoveQuest is, a year from now or whatever, is still at $7.50. So what does the farming mean to you at that point? So tier 1, what is this comparing? Tier 2, okay. It's a difference of 86 tokens. That's what you'd be missing on that. I get my own self confused. Oh, you would have farmed 5 MoveQuest, 2, 5, 10, 11. Okay, you would have farmed 11 MoveQuest in 3 cycles. Nope, I'm sorry. You guys get my own self confused. You farmed 2 the first 30 days, 3 the second cycle, 5 the third cycle. So you have 11 cycles, and you would have farmed 86 MoveQuest tokens for the same days as tier 5, which would give you 181. Now you can see what you've mined doing 11 cycles, $646. Okay, that's what your farming reward would be at the current market value. This says that after 1 year, you farmed for 1 year. No matter what tier you're in, it's 1 year that you farmed. The market value stayed the same. It didn't go up, it didn't go down. $646 staked and farmed. It would have a market value of $785. But see, all you did was stake that MoveQuest in there, and you were going to submit your proof of physical activity. Down here on the tier 5, 1,355, your farmed MoveQuest. When you get it all back, what is this based on? Oh, that's 3 tiers. This is basing it on 3 cycles. Okay, that would be $16,580 because you would have mined 2,111 if this is 3 years. Okay, tier five. Year one, 281. Year two, 788. Year three, 2,211. But the 3 years, 2,111, look here if you did 3 years, 299. So there's a big difference, but for the same amount of MoveQuest that you are farming. Now I'm just going to bump this up to the 1,400 because 10,000 people is not an unachievable community goal, right? So that farmed MoveQuest, those are your market values. So even in tier one, if you did do 11 cycles, could still bring you $120,000. And that's when 10,000, MoveQuest has grown to where there's 10,000 active, engaged people in the project. Now, how's that based on? I'm not guaranteeing you what the market value is. Here's what I base that on 10,000 people that are actively engaged in the community. They've minted 18 Trailblazer miners and they have unlocked their 18 mining dock slots and they submit on a day to day basis their proof of physical activity to the blockchain. That is what that value alone is based on. It's not based on any of the other features within our app, which is leveling up your miners to higher powered miners. It doesn't include the Q chips. It doesn't include minting through the incubator. It doesn't include any of the leasing, none of the challenges. It doesn't include the MQT Pay DApp wallet. It doesn't include the MoveQuest blockchain. Okay, so this market value could be even greater. Okay, but that is just a base. Where could it possibly be when MoveQuest has this amount of users engaged in the project? So that's just giving you the base. Right now, it's at about 2,100 submitters on a day-to-day basis. So when you have the community grow by 10,000 more people that are engaged in the project, using the app, doing their physical activity, that's what you could be looking at. So it's a pretty good goal to be able to look at the hatcheries and say, okay, as the community is growing to 10,000 users, if you use that as your base, because it really gets crazy, you guys need to start looking at 25,000 people, 50,000 people, 100,000 people, a million people. Okay, you're looking at market values that are above Bitcoin. What sets us apart is that those market values stabilize based on user engagement within the ecosystem. Okay, using the features, the gamified features inside the application, because 90% stays with the project. It doesn't go into, creator pockets, developer profits, marketing, and, there's no whales. There's none of it that exists here. So it's pretty easy to calculate what a person could expect on just using a couple factors. So the reason I wanted you guys to look at this is so you could kind of gauge it. Like we've got some people that have, 5,000 MoveQuest tokens in the tiers. I'm going to just put that in here, 5,000, just so you guys can kind of see what you're looking at. I'm one of them that has 5,000 in tier four. And so at the end of, this is just based on one cycle. That's 400. Let's see. I'm going to have 7,932 MoveQuest tokens. Tier to tier. That's two cycles. This 633. Actually, it's a lot higher than that. What did I do here? Two. This is, hold on, you guys. 79 minus. I had to finish this up real quick before I got on the call. Okay. If I ran this two cycles to match what's happening over here in tier five, in the just 10,000 users, my 2,932 MoveQuest tokens that I farmed in cycle one has a market value of $4.1 million. Now you're looking at a liquidity pool now that is sitting on over $75 million or so dollars in the liquidity pool just based on people getting their trailblazer miners, unlocking their dock slots and all that good stuff, right? Then you've got those daily submissions that go in, so it keeps, the depth of that liquidity pool to stabilize the market, the market value and the selling pressure. So that doesn't mean that if you sold 2,932 MoveQuest tokens that the market value would stay at 1,400. It would go down because if you look at like right now our fluid level, I'm just going to show you this. And then I'm going to let you guys ask me questions because I really want you guys to understand this. Right now, our liquidity pool is 78, almost 79% fluid. We're only 21% away from being fluid, meaning 273,000 USDT paired to 40,000 MoveQuest tokens, and the liquidity pool is fluid. Now, the ecosystem has this. It could be fluid today. The reason it's not is because the market value is still dropping, right? People are still selling before the demand is there. So what it does is it will let it drop a little more and it will keep adding in that liquidity, meaning when there are markets or the market value is dropping, this drops as well. So to show you, let's say we're going to take, how do I want to do this? 60,000. So if we were to deduct, let me add in let's see, 3,000 MoveQuest. This will make it that. Add the USDT people are buying. So what I want to do is I want to add, let's add 1,000 MoveQuest tokens. Okay, that would take us to 55,000. I'm going to add that. So that's going to equal this times this. All right, so now I have to add those values. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to make this 53,698. 50. And then we're going to add 6,000 there. So we'll be at about, let's just say 371,000 without me having to do the exact math. So that's adding in. Let's see. Hold on, you guys. Let me take this out. I want to take this out real quick. I'm going to type it. I'm trying to show you guys the difference here, how this works. But my market values are not the right price. Let me just edit out of here because I'm going to just explain it to you guys. I start messing things up because I'm trying to make up numbers that aren't real numbers, and I'm going to get the whole thing messed up. Let me just back out of this. I have my whole sheet messed up. But hopefully you guys are getting what I'm trying to say here to you. Let me come back over to that fluid calculator so you get what I'm saying. When you add MoveQuest into the liquidity pool, that means somebody has sold it. So you're adding in MoveQuest, but you're removing, oh, that's what I did. I didn't remove the USDT. Okay. They add in the MoveQuest, they're removing the USDT from the pool. So this really would have been, now I know what I did wrong. It's when I try to, so we're going to remove that. We're going to make it 360,000, right? And then this here, we've added in, what did I say over here? It was 1,000 MoveQuest. So that would be 55,000. There we go. Now you can see here it takes less USDT. So if the market drops down, meaning people added MQT to the pool and they removed USDT, that's what happens when you sell. Then what happens is the ecosystem, it became more fluid. It gets easier for the ecosystem to become more fluid with higher injections, which this is what you saw happen yesterday. That's an exact example of what you guys saw yesterday with let me go find this on these charts here. I got to go find where the additions went in at so I can get the, okay, right here. Let me pull this up so you guys can see it better. All right. So yesterday, it had attempted right here where it did a removal. Okay. And then it bought $1,200 worth of MoveQuest, about 160 MoveQuest, and then it added back actually more than what it. So it was 8. So there's 32, 8, 9. It's about the same, I guess. It ended up being close to the same, a little bit off um, when it added back the liquidity. But what it was trying to do was test the market, meaning when it takes the market value up just a little bit, what's going to happen? Is there enough demand for the token that it can stay at that market value or still increase, or does it trigger more selling? If it triggers more selling, then what the ecosystem does, depending on a lot of things, it will really start to add in that liquidity. Sometimes you don't know exactly when it's going to happen because it's market conditions. It's based on like a lot of the different trends. Then you'll see a ton go in sometimes. Sometimes it's 300,000 or 400,000 a week. Sometimes it's only 50,000 a week. But here you can see 2 days ago, okay, it added back in, from this removal. Then it added in an additional 20,000 a few hours later. And almost within the same time frame, it added another 10,000. Even almost in the same time frame, another 8,000. A couple hours later, it added in 12,000. And then you look at a few hours later, it added in another 17,000. Right after that, it added in almost 100,000. And then right after that, another 100,000. So it was heavy liquidity because the market value, after all of the different, tests and trends and seeing, how much is in circulation, how much is in the hatcheries, especially after the tier 5, which is a lot of that liquidity that went in. There's a lot of adjustment based on what went into the tier 5 because that shows long-term support and it relieves a lot of that selling pressure that has to be calculated within the algorithm, which allowed the algorithm to inject almost $300,000 over a 48-hour period because it knows that the tier 5 is set for 323 days. It knows how to base what those submissions are, because in order to get the farming rewards, you have to do the proof of physical activity that validates that you actually mined the MoveQuest from your proof of physical activity to validate it to be able to mine and then farm the additional rewards. And so it looked at all of those factors and how it decreased what was circulating, and then it chose this market value to really heavily pad it, which was at the time $6.85. Okay, now you're starting to see here where that market value, there's buys, right? Now that's a good sign because that means that the algorithm actually was pretty spot on when it did the major injection at the $6.85 range. Because really, what you would have continued to see if the algorithm was wrong was a continued decline. But based on trends from the last several months, that's a comfort zone for the ecosystem to really pad in that liquidity. Though there's two safeguards there. One for the holders that it's not going to drop, considerable. And then even for those who want to sell, that it really stabilized the market value in that price range. So people who sometimes fear sell, right? Because, oh my God, look at the red candlesticks. It may get all the way down to $4, right? Something like that. They would try to hurry and sell at, a $7 or $7.50 market value. But here, when you see that it stabilizes, people are still selling, but you're not seeing that huge volatile level. And that is simply because the ecosystem is currently not quite this much because I had changed the algorithm here. Let me go get the right values here. 54,706. 54,706 to 366,204. Okay, 78% fluid. It's 21% away from being fluid. It only needs, like I said, $274,000 paired to 40,000 MoveQuest tokens, and the liquidity pool would be at 1.2 million. That means that the 191,000 MoveQuest tokens that are in circulation, the absolute lowest, based on the current algorithm, that you could expect MoveQuest to settle into, and that would be everybody that has MoveQuest in their wallets selling. 77% or 78% would get closer to the $6.69 mark. About 21% would be heading into that $3 range. Okay. We have not seen that happen in MoveQuest, but that kind of gives you what those range are. And then here, the ecosystem can actually, and this is based on everybody that are in the hatcheries, this right here is all wallets plus hatcheries. So what this is doing is it's taking what's circulating, and then it's also taking the amount here that are in the hatcheries to figure out what that market cap would be, the fluid level that it would need to be. This is still pretty healthy. And the ecosystem at our current rate of community size can stabilize MoveQuest at the $36 price range at a 55%, 44% fluid level, meaning at the $36 range, 55% of the people would get between the $36 and the $6 mark, and then the other 44% would get from the $6 mark to the $3.83 mark. That's the range of what the ecosystem is telling you. Now, are these guarantees? No. What this is it's figuring up what has happened currently and in the past with MoveQuest. It's based on what's in the hatchery, how long each one are in these hatcheries. You see here, these are the different hatcheries. Okay, so I take what's in the algorithm, I put it on this spreadsheet, I come in and I fill in these green numbers so that I can very quickly see what the actual current state is. Not what the algorithm is, calculating and going to do, but through the algorithm, what's the end result looking like for us to just take a quick glance and say, okay, what are we looking like right now? So, with all that being said, and looking at the hatcheries, now if you guys, this is where we have the conversations because this is what I'm talking about tonight. And so let's focus on that and helping you guys out with the questions that you have, as far as, well, if you need anything, get you whatever your questions are. We can open up the mic. I need to see how to share my screen. I think.
Sounds good. Okay, so Jen had her hand raised first. So Jen, you can unmute, and then after that, call in.
Okay, so my question is with the amount that you are farming, it's based on all 18 docks trailblazers is what you were showing us. Is that
No,
correct?
no. So with the golden hatchery, it doesn't matter what you're mining with. You can be mining with one navigator. You can be mining with 18 titans. That doesn't matter. Okay, when we're talking about the farming. When I'm
Okay.
talking about the market values, I'm basing that on 18, somebody minted 18 trailblazers and they unlocked 18 dock slots. That's market value. But the hatchery itself is only contingent upon the amount of MoveQuest that you staked and that you did submit that proof of physical activity. It doesn't matter what you're mining with. It doesn't matter how many you've mined from your proof of physical activity. It only matters that you did submit that proof of physical activity. So it's not a pooled amount of MoveQuest that's being shared equally among people. It literally is based on your proof of physical activity submission and the amount of MoveQuest that you have in the hatchery to be farming.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have
Oh, and
Colin.
also, let me just add this real quick, Kiki. Even those of you that have the phantom miners, okay, you haven't minted miners, you haven't unlocked any dock slots, you know, you have MoveQuest in the hatchery and you are submitting that proof of physical activity to the blockchain each day that you do that, then you can farm as well in the hatchery. So you don't have to have minted miners um, to qualify to be in the hatchery. Anybody can be in the hatchery as long as you are submitting that proof of physical activity. And why is that? That means that people that are not a part of the community cannot go to the exchange and purchase MoveQuest and deposit it and just passively farm the MoveQuest token. Okay, that you can't do that. You have to be mining and you have to submit it you have to submit that proof of physical activity to the blockchain in order to qualify for the farming rewards. Okay, this keeps it very, very clean. It's not an investment tool this way. It is not passive. It's not like an interest earning type of farming. It really takes it completely out of being a financial instrument and into part of the ecosystem, the engagement of the ecosystem. The farming is contingent, like I said, on that proof of physical activity, and you haven't had to spend money to mint miners, but you do have to at least be mining with 1 to 18 of the phantoms. It doesn't matter how many phantoms, just that you are actively submitting that proof of physical activity. So hopefully that's clear. You know, that I'm not confusing people with that.
Lynette, I think you could stop sharing your screen and maybe that'll help out with the mirror effect.
There, how's that?
Perfect.
Very good. Good idea. All right,
Okay,
who is next? Colin, right?
Colin's next, and then after that we have Judy.
Okay. Hey, Colin, how are you? You have to unmute your mic, Colin. Okay, well, let's move to Judy while Colin unmutes his mic, and then
You
we can
okay?
come
You
back
have
to
the mic,
Colin.
Judy.
Oh, Colin got his mic undone. Okay, go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, sorry, I was clicking all over the place trying to figure out how
That's
to
all
mute
right. I'm like you. I can't
that.
find it on my phone.
That's where I'm at it on my phone.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just wondering, could you explain, if you have not already, you probably have, but how more space becomes available in the hatchery? I do know, like I've seen that at like tier 4, and that it filled up, and then it the space becomes available, it fills up, it becomes available, it fills up, it becomes available. Is that going to be happening with tier 5? Is it only because people have sold or uh canceled, or they uh filled their stakes? It's done,
No.
or how does
Okay.
that work?
Yep. Let me explain that. So right now, the submission on the mining is 0.25 per submission. Okay, let me share my screen real quick one more time here. But that is a really good question so that people understand how this happens. So if we were to go to, I'm already on this chart. Let me come down here. Let's say that, and I'll show you here. Let's say we have 10,000 people who are mining currently, right? That's 2,500 MoveQuest tokens that are being mined on a day-to-day basis. Then what it does is it says, okay, based on those submissions, what is going into liquidity? Okay, now when there is, and it is that way, an overflow amount of, so what's coming in through the ecosystem to go into the liquidity is actually higher than what the market value of the token is. Okay, so it takes what's the market value of the token, the amount of token that's going out per day. Whatever is extra, okay, from that liquidity. So it wants to stabilize that 2,500 every single day that's being mined, because that's what the ecosystem assumes is going to be sold on the market every day. Whatever is being mined, the algorithm takes into effect or into account that that will be sold. Then what it does is whatever is considered overflow liquidity. Now, this would be incubator, okay, people who are minting vanguards from the incubator, people who are leveling up their miners from, say, Navigator to Trailblazer, Trailblazer to Explorer, Explorer to Vanguard, Vanguard to Titan. It would be Q chips, the pay as you go. It would look at mining dock slots, what's coming in from, mining dock 11 to 18, because that's MoveQuest as well, that's being paired to the overflow of AVAX or USDT, whatever it may be that's coming in. It would look at what is the ecosystem bringing from leasing or from challenges or from, when the MQT Pay wallet is released or the MoveQuest blockchain. What does all of that factor into? What now can the community liquidity ecosystem support to increase what's now in the hatchery? So then what it does is it figures out, based on how many days are being staked, the amount that is being staked, based on the average submissions, what can the ecosystem sustain 30 days from now, 75 days from now, 135 days from now, 210 days from now, 323 days from now, and then it adjusts the max amount in the hatcheries, meaning we can stabilize the market value, we can stabilize the liquidity pool based on X amount being staked. So what it will do then is it'll increase the amount that can be staked inside the hatcheries so that it can still, that's management of oversupply, right? Being held in those hatcheries, farming the extra MoveQuest that will be needed in the ecosystem in the future based on the growth that it's seen between 2,258 submissions to 10,000 submissions. Did that make sense what I'm saying to you? So the algorithm is extremely complex, but it's factoring in what extra flow of liquidity is going to be able to stabilize the market at X amount of tokens, and how many should be actually circulating based on the demand. Is the supply and the demand balanced? There's so many factors. So it could actually decrease what could be staked in the hatchery. So for example, let's say we've got 25,000 engaged users in the ecosystem. And if it starts to see an inflated market value that the ecosystem cannot stabilize, it would decrease what could actually be held in those hatcheries. Because first and foremost, it's got to handle what can be mined on a daily basis based on each day's amount, okay, plus what's going in the hatchery. So it can go back or forward. It can decrease the max amount that can be staked, or it could increase. So it balances out on either direction. So if we were to have massive growth, let's say we did viral growth in the next 90 days, let's say we all of a sudden hit, 100,000 users. What would happen is an inflated market value at that point, because there's not enough MoveQuest in circulation here for that to happen. Okay, just based on that number. But 100,000 MoveQuest or 100,000 users that are submitting on a day-to-day basis. I'm just going to show you this because this would never happen because it's not in the algorithm. You're saying, okay, 25,000 MoveQuest tokens, but that can't happen. The max is 7,200 that can go out per day. So now what it would do is it would look at the hatchery's current max value, and it would start to decrease that. And it would also decrease it from 0.25 to probably 0.17 or 18, meaning the market value is way high, but the amount that you're actually able to mine on a day-to-day basis is extremely low compared to what it is currently today. Okay, that means if you're mining with 18 Trailblazers, and you're mining zero point 0.4 MoveQuest per day at $7.50. 100,000 users mining the MoveQuest token. Okay, you're looking at MoveQuest higher than Bitcoin's highest. That's what MoveQuest market value would be. Now, those people who are mining with 18 Trailblazers might only be mining 0.04 MoveQuest, but at $100,000 market value is far greater than the 0.4 at $7.50. Now, think about this on another level. Every single day that you're mining 0.4 right now is a lot when you look at what will be mined when there's 100,000 people mining the MoveQuest token. So if you were to take 0.4 MoveQuest every single day, let's say it took us 3 years, okay, to have 100,000 people mining, MoveQuest. So 0.4 times that by even 365 days, what would that be? Then times it by 0.04 for 365 days, what would that be? Take the higher amount that you've mined over the next 1 year, times it by $100,000, you have a significantly greater value that you're able to sell because you've mined so much more MoveQuest. So when you get started with something, you have, you're an early adopter, for example. Those of you that are in those hatcheries that are mining those higher amounts of MoveQuest right now, you are basically the gatekeeper for the supply and the demand in the future when there is a high demand for that token. So where you might be selling today 50 MoveQuest for $300, you would be able to sell 0.1 MoveQuest for $300. Okay, just an example. I don't know what the math is. So it's all about a balance based on supply and demand, not in the ecosystem, making sure there's not an inflated market value. You have to make sure the ecosystem does that whatever is being mined or farmed, the ecosystem is able to keep that value stable so that you don't see fluctuations go 100,000 down to $3,000. Okay, you would see back in the day when Bitcoin hit, I think it was the first time it hit $25,000. Then all of a sudden it dropped down to 12. Then it dropped down to 8. Then it dropped down to $3,000, and it stayed that way for a very long time. And you wouldn't see that here in MoveQuest. Now I know I went way long into answering that additional question, Colin, but hopefully you understand now how that works. So the max amount right now, based on our size, the community size, and what its trend has been over the last year and a half, was 765,000 for the tier 4. Now the 50,000 in tier 5, that was going to open up when tier 4 had completed its first card. But with the algorithm and what it did was when I went and figured in the numbers, I had to make sure that when that tier 5 came out, what was it going to, based on trends, blah, 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 what would the max be? The max was actually quite a bit higher. It was around 80, I think it was 87,000 MoveQuest tokens. So then I had to do the math backwards, and that's where it's set at the 50,000. So based on growth, the tier 5 could grow into that 87,000 mark, okay, for its max. Tier 4 is pretty much at its max right now. You won't see that increase. And same thing with like tier 3, tier 1, tier 2. Those will probably be obsolete, honestly. We'll probably phase out tier 1. It doesn't get a whole lot of traction when you look at the hatchery. If I come over here to the actual hatchery, there's 845 MoveQuests there. Could be 5,000. But then all the math has to calculate, okay, what would that be, 0.00, whatever it is for tier 1. And if you were to add it to another tier, we'd have to figure out the math so that it worked out right, because it still can't do more than what this tier can handle in another tier. So it doesn't really make a big difference in the other tiers. So there can't really be much more adjustment. They're pretty much set where they're at until the size of the community grows and we can get closer to that 7,200 MoveQuest tokens that are going out every day. Did that help answer that question?
It did. It did because the bottom line is going to fluctuate and it's not dependent of the end result in 1 year from now. So it's good. Uh, it's very detailed. A lot I really don't understand, but that is fine. I can take the transcript and even ChatGPT will explain it and dumb it down to my type of understanding, maybe a lot more. But yeah, it's good. Great. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and that was a really good question that you asked because, when you're looking at tokenomics and you're looking at stability and, liquidity and inflated market values, you should always be afraid of an inflated market value on a token. And so if there's not enough in supply, like right now, the 192,000, that's perfect for, the size of our community right now and the amount of MoveQuest that's going out. But if we were to go to 100,000 overnight, which based on the algorithm and everything, that wouldn't happen even realistically, because a lot of people, they still have to get set up and understand it. And basically what the algorithm is saying right now is that it can handle, at its current level, 100 new users per day without an inflated market value, meaning it could stabilize 100 new users that were coming into the community, minting those miners based on, what would go into liquidity, 100 new users per day, and it would stabilize that fine before you would start to see an inflated market value. Now, if it got to a point where you were seeing an inflated market value, then what you would see is a decrease in the amount of MoveQuest that could be mined each day. So it would make the mining difficulty more difficult. The mining difficulty would begin to increase, meaning you would be mining less so that it can stabilize what the market value can handle. It would decrease what could be in the hatcheries, which means this. Those that would be coming out of the hatchery, let's say that tier 4 says, okay, there can only be 700,000 based on supply and demand. As those cards are renewing, if it would decrease down to 700,000, the cards that were renewed wouldn't be able to renew. They would have to go into a different tier, or they would have to wait for more room. So if you're claiming that MoveQuest, you can sit inside that tier and you wouldn't be able to farm the reward, right? But you could sit there so that when somebody did claim, you could renew and begin to farm in that tier again. Why is that? Because it needs to push MoveQuest into circulation to control the inflated market value. It would force selling pressure so that it could maintain a comfortable market value that the ecosystem can support, so that you wouldn't see a market value that was too high, that couldn't be supported by the ecosystem. And then you would see, that higher selling, which would make it more volatile, and it would drop the market value quickly, if that makes sense. So the algorithm works back and forth. It does all of it. It makes sure that it can't go too high inflation wise, because then it would decrease what could be farmed, pushing that into circulation, which would stabilize the market value again at the current rate, meaning the supply would be able to meet the demand. Not to further confuse the system or the subject, but just let you guys know. So it does go both ways. Okay, did you have any other questions, Colin, or is that done?
That is good for me for now. Yeah.
Okay. And then Judy.
Hey there. Can you hear me all right?
I can. How are you doing?
I'm I'm doing great. Great. Better than great, actually. I have a couple of quick questions. One, would you consider the hatchery to be a kind of vault?
It is. Yep, I do absolutely consider that. And I think a lot of people that are in the nest are using it like a vault, um, because they are safe there, right? And you can claim them anytime. And I mean, it's the lowest reward rate, but it's only 10 days. So every 10 days they are farming something, but it's available to them quickly without forfeiting any farmed MoveQuest. So I think the tier four or the nest is being used that way, especially. But it's a great place to park them security wise because all you have to do is go in and cancel, and it immediately is returned right back to your wallet. So it's all smart contract managed for you.
Okay. Yeah. So that kind of, I just wanted to clarify that so that I am actually on topic, and stay on topic with the subject that you're discussing tonight, because my concern is, right now with everything that's going on all over the world. As you know, I am actually in Canada, and
Hmm.
the majority of the users are in the United States. And
Actually, you know what? The majority of the users are not in the United States, surprisingly.
oh, okay, well then even
Yeah.
better. So then this will actually be relevant to a lot of people. Um, a lot of people say, well, the US dollar is stable, the USDT is stable. But those of us in other countries who are actually being paid in US dollars, or whose income has been based in US dollars, see the fluctuation constantly as the world reserve currency. Everybody's focused on the dollar. So, with everything that's going on right now, if the US dollar loses its purchasing power, how does that affect our MQT that is paired to the USDT? And would you be able to swap out the USDT for another crypto that might hold its value better? Does that
So
make
USDT, USDC, BUSD, any of those stable tokens, they are all 99 cents to $1. There isn't a token outside of a stable token that's going to hold a dollar, $1 value. This is why we do the liquidity pool to the USDT because, had we done it to AVAX, right? If we would have created a liquidity pool, MoveQuest paired to AVAX, and AVAX at the time was in the 20-ish dollar range, today we would see a drastically lower MoveQuest token, under a dollar, okay, because it
Mhm.
would have been paired to a very volatile token that had dropped so drastically. So we pair MoveQuest to the USDT so that you can see the real market value of MoveQuest based on, a US dollar or
Yeah,
99 cents. Not
yeah, no,
that.
no, no.
Now, I'm not just talking about, so that would be the only thing. We use USDT because at the moment that is the easiest for most people. We were using that BUSD on the Binance Smart Chain. Now, to me, I don't deal with the US dollar too much. I'm so crypto for the last, like I said, since 2008. But it's my understanding, and I'm not in another country, right?
Hmm.
But when I went to Dubai, my US dollars were worth so much more in Dubai. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, so in Canada, it's not so much that the US dollar fluctuates, it's that the other country's currency fluctuates to the US dollar. So I don't know what Canada's exchange rate is, but I think it's below $1, right?
Yeah. See, okay, let me give you an example of what I'm saying. I mean, everything that you've mentioned there is still a stable coin, but it's based on the US fiat dollar. Now, for years in the network marketing industry, I've worked with companies that were based in the US, so I would get my checks in US dollars. Now, if for instance, let's say if I were to, in a binary cycle like 10 times a week, okay, if I made like 800 US a week, that would be, I would see the difference. It would be anywhere between 1,000 to 1,200 Canadian, but it was always 800 US. And it would
Hmm.
fluctuate, and it's based on the fluctuation of the US dollar. So what
Right.
asking is there another stable coin? If, for instance, because of what is taking place in global economies, and particularly in the United States, there is the potential for the US dollar fiat currency upon which the USDT is based to crater. So I'm asking, is there another stable coin, or do you have the ability to uh, swap out the USDT for, let's say, a stable euro?
I don't know of a stable euro because I am always USDT. I'd have to look that up. I don't even know if there is such a thing, is there?
There is a euro stable coin. Yeah, but I'm just asking, is that ability there to
I don't know. I'd
swap
have to
it
look
out,
into that and
or
see. I would have to look into that. That's not really something I did have looked into, but
okay?
I will look into that. And because I mean, that's kind of interesting. And
Hey, Lynette, we have two more people with their hand raised. Do we want to call it there, just
yep,
in
yep,
case? Okay,
yep.
so we have Mary and Jonathan, and those will be the last questions. And
Awesome,
Mary,
awesome.
your hand was raised first, so you go ahead.
Hi. So thank you so much for bringing this project, first of all, and all of your explanation. But I just have a quick question. I think you pretty much answered it. But so do we expect then the hatcheries eventually, with the growth and so on and so forth, we won't eventually have the need for the hatcheries, so they'll go away and all of the distribution will be through mining?
No, there would always, well, I can't say there would always be the hatcheries, but there will always be a hatchery. So what you would see happen, okay, so give you an example. With the incubator, people spend MoveQuest, right, to mint those vanguards. Okay, that MoveQuest stays in the incubator for future rewards in the hatchery. Okay, just so that's clear to people. Reason is people have spent that MoveQuest. There's plenty of MoveQuest that comes in for the actual ecosystem's liquidity, but that will keep a hatchery alive in the future. So because people don't get that MoveQuest back from the incubator, what they get is a 222 days to be able to get. I think it's 0.0001 per MoveQuest spent. Now, the other thing you have to remember with these hatcheries is that when less MoveQuest is being mined, that's less MoveQuest that can be staked, okay, into these hatcheries. So we do have a reserve of MoveQuest through the incubator for future hatcheries when we're at the max capacity of MoveQuest that's either mined or farmed per day. But there will always be a balance between the two based on supply and demand. But as the MoveQuest market value increases, as the demand for the MoveQuest increases, as the engagement within the community increases, you see less MoveQuest being mined, which means less goes into the hatchery. So the adjustments will take place where it would be lower amounts, right, to facilitate that, but those hatcheries would still be there. So you may see one, tier two, go away. Tier three, tier four, tier five will always be here. You'd start to see the amounts, the max amounts, decrease if the supply was lower than what the demand was. But if there come a time where the demand was less than the supply, then you would see those hatcheries increase again. So tier three, four, five are secure. The nest is also secure, and the incubator. So you would see those remain at all times because those are parts of the actual ecosystem's foundation. And that incubator would also become part of those hatchery rewards that people would receive. So that is a secure part of the ecosystem that will always be in place.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, last question is Jonathan.
Hi, Lynette. So
Hello.
when the MoveQuest blockchain launches, will the fact that, assuming they're submitting with MoveQuest, will the fact that the tokens are getting locked up outweigh the fact that uh, we're basically providing those project liquidity out of MoveQuest.
Ask me that one more time, Jonathan.
So on the MoveQuest blockchain, the other projects, they'll be
Hmm.
using MoveQuest to submit.
Correct.
We would in turn be providing them with liquidity.
So if a project is building on MoveQuest, right? So there's two scenarios to this. We could build a project on any blockchain right now that wasn't MoveQuest, right? And any of our users would have to use that blockchain's native token. It would be the same thing on the MoveQuest blockchain. Now, the next scenario would be a project wants to use MoveQuest on the MoveQuest blockchain. That means they are a project. They already have their own token, right? Now, what they would be doing is the gas fee, people would have to submit the gas fee using the MoveQuest token. Now, because we're adding USDT as an option for submission, those projects, even on the MoveQuest blockchain, would have the option to use MoveQuest or USDT to submit. Now, we do not supply them with liquidity out of MoveQuest. What happens is they have basically their project utilizes the MoveQuest platform protocol. They get their own smart contracts, meaning, let's say, I'm just going to use what's on Netflix right now, The Ranch. Okay, let's say that's the name of the project, The Ranch. And the ranch community has the MoveQuest miners, and they're mining for the ranch token. So they're going to submit every day using the gas fee to, MoveQuest to cover that gas fee. And they're going to most likely use the USDT to submit their proof of physical activity or the MoveQuest, whichever they wanted. Now, that project, when people are submitting, that smart contract is automated for liquidity. So it would either pair MoveQuest to their token for their liquidity, or it would pair USDT to their token for liquidity. It would be that project's choice as to what they wanted to use. Now, if you have other projects and they're using the MoveQuest as their liquidity pair, that's going to create even more demand for the MoveQuest token. What ends up happening in that scenario, people would sell their token for MoveQuest, sell the MoveQuest probably for USDT or whatnot. So it would be on if it was me being a project, I would say, okay, use the MoveQuest to submit. What happens to that MoveQuest when it's submitted for the gas fee? It comes back through the ecosystem for future liquidity on the MoveQuest side. But for the project, if their community uses USDT to submit, they take that USDT, they pair it to their token, and then you don't have that selling pressure on the MoveQuest token. So that would be two different scenarios based on what that project wanted to do. Now, looking at how MoveQuest operates, I would always tell projects, I mean, it's great, some of these projects that use the blockchain's native token, but if you're a new project, you really don't want to, if you don't have the proper liquidity to sustain selling pressure yet, it would always be a better option for new projects to have their community submit with USDT and pair that to their token, because their market value of their token would be based on MoveQuest market value. So if MoveQuest is really high, then it's going to inflate their market value of their token. If MoveQuest is really low, then it's going to affect their true market value of their token. So for me and any new project, if they're new or newer, or if their stability, if their liquidity isn't stable, if they need to do, some work on their project, which a lot of them do, MoveQuest is a great way to bring that stability into your project. But using the USDT, if you're on the MoveQuest blockchain, and for the reasons I just stated, on both sides.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, everybody. I think that's it for the night. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. And then really you guys, any topic that you want help on or you think we need to explain better or you have questions on, we'll start doing these calls so that we can get a better handle on everything. And maybe it'll help I know it's a confusing project. And trust me, you guys, sometimes I have to sit back and look at everything and like, oh yeah, I forgot that's there. There's certain things I forgot are supposed to be here that still aren't here yet that I'll talk about next week that are going to be implemented here very soon. Little pieces that help the ecosystem as well. And I was just thinking of one of them today, and I can't for the life of me think of what it was right now. So I have to go back up to my office and look at my notes. But anyway, um, this is I love our project. It's very solid, and it was built for the community. And I love doing it, and I really want people to understand, how all of this works. And I really think that it's going to teach people what to stay away from. There's a lot of projects out there, I think, that have good intentions. There's more that don't have good intentions. They're looking at, what they're going to take in on their own side. And if you guys can, if you're a part of something that has that self-sustaining ecosystem like MoveQuest, somebody said it perfect the other day. Herschel sent me this little blurb of I don't even know who the person is. He's not a part of MoveQuest, but he's been researching it because he's heard about us. He calls us the unicorn in the crypto space. And we really are a unicorn in this space. There's nothing out there like us. But if you really dig in and you don't get overwhelmed with the complexity of this project, everything that's a part of MoveQuest, you guys need to understand. It will be your safety net from getting involved in all of those crappy projects that you'll just lose money on. Unless you're lucky to be, one of the first in and the quickest out. So thank you guys for taking your time to listen to me